Hi and welcome. My name is Bansagu and I'm a sales engineer working at NetIQ. Today I'm going to be running through a user provisioning scenario with policy. This involves a fictional firm called Big Firm. Now the scenario is that Big Firm has a new hire who needs to be provisioned to access their systems to do their job. But before gaining access, they must read and acknowledge the corporate policies which Big Firm wants all employees to read before access is granted. We have three characters in this demo, the first one being the manager who's hiring the new employee. The manager is responsible for ensuring that the employee is properly provisioned and in accordance with Big Firm's provisioning process. The second is the new hire themselves, whose job is to really log on and read and acknowledge the policies assigned to them. And then we have human resources, who plays an approver role. So they approve the new hire having access to the Big Firm systems. So the first thing we're going to see is the Big Firm new hire form. Now this is a standard Word document which the manager of the new hire will go ahead and complete. Here we have a new hire called Gary Scott, and some of his key details are listed. For example, the fact that he's a contractor, there's a start and an end date listed off his contract, the department that he'll work in, the role title which he'll go ahead and assume once he starts work, and the manager who will report to. So this is Big Firm's user provisioning process. Now the way it's going to work is the manager of the new hire will go ahead and email the new hire form which you've just seen to Aegis as an attachment. Now Aegis is our IT process automation solution which will go ahead and kick off the workflow. The first thing we're going to do in the workflow is create a folder locally to save this attachment in. We'll extract the attachment from the email and read it, which is essentially the new hire form. We'll copy the attributes from the new hire form and save them as internal Aegis attributes. We can use these attributes then to build a description of the new hire. And we can use that description once we're going to go ahead and create the Active Directory record for that new hire. After the description's been built, we'll email HR and say, hey HR, we have a new employee joining Big Firm. Please can you approve this new employee accessing Big Firm systems? So once the email is sent, we'll await HR's response. Assuming HR respond with the approval by replying back to the email, we'll go ahead and create an Active Directory record for the user. We'll also go ahead and add that user or the new hire to two security groups, the first being the policy group. So the purpose of the policy group is to ensure that the new employee only gets the right policies which are applicable to their role. The second is the restricted group, which ensures that when the first time the new hire logs in to the desktop, they only see a restricted version of the desktop. Now this is locked down by group policy objects. They'll see this desktop until they go ahead and read and acknowledge the policies which have been assigned to them. Then we'll send an email to the manager of the employee to prompt the employee to log in for the first time. We'll await the new employee to read and acknowledge the policies which have been assigned to them. Once acknowledged, we'll move the employee out the restricted group and add the employee to the privileged group, ensuring that the employee gets the full functionality of the desktop. We'll finally email the employee's manager to prompt the employee to re-log in to access the full desktop to start work. So to kick off the process, I'm going to send a new email from the manager to Aegis, and I'm going to send it to Aegis's mailbox. Now the subject of the email is going to be new user request, and I'm going to go ahead and attach the new hire form for Gary Scott and click send. As you can see, the user provisioning process has been kicked off. The green ticks indicate the stage at which the process is reached. So we've now sent an email to HR and are awaiting HR to approve adding this user to Active Directory. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and check the inbox of HR, and there you see we have an email. So this email is saying your approval is required for this new employee to access Big Firm systems. and I can see Gary's details. I'm just going to go ahead and click reply and respond with an approve and click send. So let's see how we're getting on with the user provisioning process. Well, as you can see, we've created the Active Directory record, we've added the new hire to the 2 security groups, we've sent an email to the manager, and we're awaiting the new hire to read and acknowledge the policies assigned to them. So this is the manager's inbox, and I'm going to click refresh here. Here's an email for Gary Scott, which is saying the record for Gary has been created. He does have access to the restricted policy environment, and this is his user ID and password. I'm going to now log off as Gary's manager and log on as Gary himself to see what Gary sees for the first time. I can see the policy portal of Big Firm as soon as I log in. I can also see the information security policy which has been assigned to me. So let's load that up. I can see the different sections of the policy, so the purpose of the information security policy, who is affected, the terms and definitions of the policy itself, who owns the policy, and as I scroll down I can get into more detail around the introduction, the topics covered, the standards, violations, etc. For the purposes of this demo, I'm just going to go ahead and tick I have read and understood the policy and click submit. Let's minimize the portal. As you can see, it's a pretty restricted environment. There's no active desktop, there's no start button, I can't right click on anything. In fact, the only thing I can do is go ahead and acknowledge the policies and log off, which is what I'm going to do now. So since I've acknowledged the policies as Gary Scott, you can see the process has moved on. I've removed Gary Scott from the restricted group and added him to the privileged group. As a final action, we've sent an email to his manager to let Gary know that he has access to the standard desktop build. So let's re-log in as Gary Scott to see what his desktop experience looks like now. I can see the Windows taskbar as I log in. If I right click and go to properties, I can see an active desktop, so I can change the wallpaper if I want to. If I go to the start menu, I can see all my applications, so I can access those if I want to. And as you remember, these features weren't available during the first logon because I was in a restricted group. So let's log off as Gary Scott and re-log in as his manager to find out the email he should have received. So if I click on my email client and go to my inbox, I can see we've just received a new email. The email says the new joiner Gary Scott has acknowledged the policies applied to him and now can access the standard desktop build. So to summarize, what we've seen is the automated user provisioning process initiated from a new hire form which was emailed to Aegis. Aegis created the Active Directory user record for the new hire and only gave access to a restricted desktop build once the new hire had initially logged on. Once the policies which were assigned to the new hire had been read and acknowledged, Aegis moved the new hire from the restricted group to a privileged group and gave that new hire access to the standard desktop build. That concludes the user provisioning demo. Thank you very much for listening.